Based on the base, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Now, for some reason I don't fully understand. Maybe it comes up later in the Masechta. I don't recall. Shimon ben Azai seems to be a big topic, a hot topic here, specifically ben Azai as being one of the Talmidim who had to be an essential part of, who would have likely to argue with the Sanhedrin and know that they were wrong, and so they weren't. If you would follow them, you would follow them because you would make a mistake and say that. His mistake would be they would think the Torah said I have to follow them nonetheless, even though they're mistaken. And we're in the line right above the Yerushalmi on the left hand, on the right hand margin. Wait a minute, if he's mistaken that he thinks that the Torah said follow them even if they're wrong, then he's not an outstanding Talmid Chacham like Shimon ben Azai who's suitable to Paskin, because he should be familiar with the following drasha, the Tani. He should be familiar with that which he learned. This is different than Rashi Chumash. It's a very famous kasha, the contradiction between the Yerushalmi and Chumash and this Yerushalmi Horayos. Because Rashi Chumash means on the drasha, I feel amin l'chal yamin shu small about small shu yamin. You're supposed to listen to divrei chachamim L'saser, mikar rucha, whatever it says there. Don't deviate from whatever they tell you. So the Kohen the Chumash, even if they're wrong, even if they seem to you wrong, you're supposed to follow them. But the way the Yerushalmi has it, not according to Chumash, according to Sifri, where the Yerushalmi says it, Yochli Mermel Chayomin Shu Small Bal Small Shu Yomin Tishma Lahem. Why you should you follow them, even if they tell you that right is left or left is right. Tam Loma, it's supposed to say no. It should say Asher Yagidu L'cha, Yaminu Small. Whatever they tell you on right and on left, Sheyomu L'cha, they should tell you Yamin Sheyomin Val Small Shu Small. Okay, and this is again not like the drasha in the Bavli, and the Bavli I don't think has this drasha, but not like the Sifri. In the not like the Sifri which drashens that even to tell you that left is right and right is left. And there's a very long Amud Yerushalayim here who brings down all the people who argue in the Yerushalmi, and he doesn't have a good answer. The Kikar Laden brings down here from the Chidah. I don't know, the Kikar Laden might actually be the Chidah, but he brings down here from the Chidah that there are two types of left and right. I mean, there's something where it's a blatant mistake, or something which seems to you like it might be a mistake, but really it's more of a judgment call. So that when Rashi and Chumash says even to tell you that left is right and right is left, it means that something which is, you might think they're wrong, but it's Wad Shikla Das. Whereas this is something where they're so blatantly in error, so it's not really a contradiction. So then you meant, so Lamaisa, the Yerushalmi says, if that's the case, how can you talk about, the Bavli says that Shaykh Shagaga, in that you thought that it's necessary to follow Sanhedrin even though they're wrong, right? Right, that you should follow the Chachamim with you think they're a mistake. But the Yerushalmi rejects it. The Yerushalmi says there's no such mistake like that. Yerushalmi says if you know that they're wrong, you're not to follow them. And Shimon ben Azai, who is somebody who's suitable to argue in the Sanhedrin, would know not to follow them in such a case. So where is it shaykh in such a case? Yerushalmi is still bothered in a case. What is the case where a person could be shogeg and follow Sanhedrin even though he knows that the Sanhedrin is wrong? Again, because you can't just say, well, I'm following them because I think I have to follow them when they're wrong, because Yerushalmi just said, you don't follow Sanhedrin if you think they're wrong. So what's the case of a shogeg where he made that mistake? So Mike could do, what's the case like that? Rabbi Yosef Shemar said, Pisha b'chol mokum shogeg poter mezid chayav. Says no. When our Mishnah says shogeg, this is not like the Bavli. When our Mishnah says if you're shogeg and following following the Beis Din, so it means you could be amazing. You could be intentionally following the Beis Din, right? It's not that you know that the Aveira is, or rather, I meant to say is that you could know that Aveira is wrong, and you follow doing it anyway because Beis Din said to do it. In that case, you shouldn't listen to the basic because you know that they're wrong. So nevertheless, that's still considered to be also baras basin. Shechom makam shogei potter mezid chayev v'koh afilu mezid potter. Even if you know they're wrong, your examination total bit based in. In fact, what he wants to say, which is a tremendous chiddush, if I understand it correctly, that normally the shogeg is potter, but here it's chayev. I mean, normally mezid is potter from korban, but here mezid is chayev and korban. Why is he chayev and korban? Because he followed based in. Now that makes no sense, really, because the Yerushalmi just got through saying he shouldn't have listened to based in. So where is his shogeg? In order to be in korban, you have to be shogeg on some account. Here we knew that there is also he knew he's not supposed to listen to based in on any account. So it's very difficult. Again, according to Bavli, his shogeg is that he thought you're supposed to listen to based in, even when based in makes a mistake. But the Yerushalmi rejects that. The Yerushalmi says you don't listen to based in, they make a mistake. If they're in error, then you don't listen to them. So where's the shogeg? It's a double mazid. So the truth is, if you look at the Yerushalmi carefully, it looks like the Gilead Ephraim is correct. Because I glossed over the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says, listen, look at it carefully. Ma'ikadu Rabbi Yosef Yerushalmi said, Vishu v'chol makom shogeg potter mezid chayev. What do you mean shogeg potter mezid chayev? You say v'chol makom shogeg chayev u'mezid potter. All over, shogeg must bring a korban, and a mezid exempt from a korban. But here it says the opposite. So the way the Gilead Ephraim wants to learn on the bottom would say a tremendous chiddush. And he's probably right, because the Lashon of the Gemara. You want to say a story, our mission is about Malchus. Our mission is really talking about Malchus, and he really wants to say, or even Moshe, I think, says, somebody says Misa's based in, that normally a shogeg is parted from Misa's, from Malchus, and a mezid is chayev from Malchus. But here, even the mezid is parted. Why is that? Even they should totally be based in. Now, so what? So what if it's totally be based in? He knew it's wrong. So the Gilead Ephraim says a real Polish avort. He says, in order to get Malchus, you need Hasra. But based in just paskin that this Avera is mutter, right? That's the whole concept of Horayos. Who's going to give him Hasra? What Adam can come to him and say, Yaakov, you're about to commit an Avera. He'll say, I'm not going to commit an Avera. Based in his paskin, it's mutter. He knows it's asur! Right? He knows they made a mistake. He knows it's awesome to listen to them. But we still can't give him Malchus. Why can't we give him Malchus? Because of a technicality. There's nobody who can adjudicate this case. Okay? Now, it's far-fetched that the Mishnah is talking about Malchus, but that's how he wants to say it. In other words, so when the Mishnah said at the end of the Masechta that V'ach Yachi V'asa Shogeg Al Piem, right? Hareza Patur, it means that even though he's amazing, there's still a shogeg vis-a-vis Malchus. Because even though he's amazing, we can't give him Asra, so he can never be liable for Malchus. Okay? So again, it's distorting the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah really, we learned till now, has to do with Korban. And whether you bring a Korban when based in Paskins, or you don't bring a Korban when based in Paskins. But Lamaisa, we're up the creek, according to Yerushalmi, if you're not allowed to blizzard the base when they make a mistake, and you knew better, and you knew that they made a mistake, so you're amazed on all accounts. So what could possibly be the reason being korban? What could possibly be the reason you're exempt from being your own personal korban? But you're exempt from your korban. What exactly exempt you for? How can you call you a shogeg? So therefore, what we're saying is that it's shogeg that he's parted from Malchus. Okay? So that's again what it says, Michael Rabbi Yosef, B'Shem Rabbi Yosef, if you should call Makom Shogeg parted Mezid Chayev, the Kahil of here, I feel Mezid parted, even the Mezid is law exempt, Neish Tal B'Veis is exempt not from Korban, but he's exempt from Malchus. Okay? Chavrai B'Shem Shmuel. The Chavrai name of Shmuel said, Yochid Mashlim L'Rob Tzibur, he must nisa. I'm going to tell you about where you have 49%, 50%, of the community commit Aveira, because based in Pascha. And this guy puts it out over the top for 51%. I will call Yachid She'asa B'fnei Atzmo, but but each individual who did on his own, meaning if there's less than 50%, let's say an individual that they're 49.9% of Klal Yisrael committed sin, based on a rose based on. So then they have to bring individual korbanos. It says here Potter, but we're going to switch because all of them force switch.
Potter here with maybe Kisbos here from the 2-line tense. Everybody holds your law. Now, what's interesting about Shmuel is that even like this, Shmuel holds that if the less than majority of Basin sinned, they bring a korban. If even a majority sinned, if they didn't sin because Basin paskin that way, but rather, you never heard of Basin paskin that way, you just figure you're going to sin. It was really a shogi. But you ate the chaylev, not knowing the Basin matir chaylev. You ate the chaylev unintentionally based on your own mistake. You thought chaylev was awesome, but you ate it nonetheless. And you had not heard that Basin had been matir chaylev at that time. You still bring your own korban, even if a majority of Klal Yisrael sinned. So according to Shmuel, if minority of Klal Yisrael sinned up here, Rosh Beitzin, or even a majority, but some of them sin based on their own ignorance, not based on Beitzin's psak, they all bring their own individual korbanos. Okay? Even an individual who did on his own, potter. Now there's two facets for Rabbi Yochanan as well. According to Rabbi Yochanan, if less than 50% of Klal Yisrael sins, they're still exempt, even though Basin doesn't bring a korban. Basin only brings the korban their par helim davar if more than 50% of Klal Yisrael sin. If less than 50% of Klal Yisrael sins, then Basin doesn't bring a korban, but nevertheless the guy is off the hook. Why? Because he did up here Rosh Basin. In this case, Basin doesn't bring a korban, but he's also exempt being a korban. And even if it's even if he did the korban, the avera on his own cognizance, again, he wasn't aware of the psak based in. Nevertheless, he also, in that case, doesn't bring a korban. So there are two elements in the machlokas of Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel over here. According to Shmuel, if you have less than 50% of Klal Yisrael and basis not bringing a korban, he brings a korban no matter what. Even if it's more than 50% and basis is bringing a korban, if he did the sin on his own cognizance, he still brings his own korban. According to Rabbi Yochanan, every time there is a tzibur commits a sin, al pi Rosh Basin, even less than 50%, and Basin is not bringing a korban, he himself doesn't bring a korban. And where Basin does bring a korban, well, for that matter, even if Basin doesn't bring a korban, but where there's a tzibur, which is doing it based on Haraz Basin, even if you did it on your own, nevertheless you're exempt from a korban.
So according to the what fact would prompt the individual bring his own korban?
A basin and paskin. And I'm going to explain that. No psak basin. It's really balbatish, right? Yeah. Basin and paskin. What makes this all complicated is the fact of a Rosh basin. Okay? The kasha of to Rish Shmuel, so we have difficulty according to Shmuel. Lo nimtza kol yochid v'yochid miskapel b'shnei chatos. I don't understand a case where basin is bringing a korban because it was Rok Tzibur, and you're bringing a korban yourself because you did it on your own ignorance, not because you heard a basin psak. So aren't there two korbanos being brought on this guy, the korban of basin and the korban of himself? So the truth is, it's not a kasha. It's really not a kasha. The Mechaman calls it a kusha lav chaluta. It's not a true kasha. Yeah, so what? Basin has its own level which it brings a korban for itself, and you have your own level which you bring a korban for yourself. It's not a kasha. But Rabbi Zira Taka reneges in the name of Shmuel. Rabbi Zira says in the name of Shmuel, he doesn't hold like the Chavrai name of Shmuel. He says Taka Hayachid Toli. It depends. The individual's contingent. Ochlu Rov, majority of Am Yisrael sin, but based in Mevin. Then based in brings the korban, no matter what, whether he's part of the rov or not part of the rov. Once based brings the korban, there's only that one korban of based in. And Ochlu Miut, only for minority eight Hayachid maybe the individual brings. Even there, there's an argument. He's still, even according to him, there's still an argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel, but not as big a machlekes. Because he'll hold according to this that once you have a majority, he'll agree with Rabbi Yochanan that only Basin brings. So the minority, Rabbi Yochanan will hold the Basin paskin, the minority is still exempt. But Shmuel will hold if Basin paskin, according to Rabbi Zira, Basin paskin. Even the basic paskin, as long as the minority is still the individual brings his own korban. Okay? Now, next Gemara. The Gemara says in Tag Gimel Amral, Kol ha'roya shebeistin shebeistin. Anytime the roya is in beistin, par shekol roya shebeistin should be beistin mevim par. Beistin brings the bull, and a yochid may be kisba v'sir. The individual does not bring a lamb or a sheep as his own personal korban. Now here it should say as well,
Moshe brings it down. It's interesting. Horayos is unique in that, almost unique, is unique, I think, in that in the Vilna Shas, in the Bavli, there's the Nuschas Talmud B'nei Me'arava. In other words, it brings down the whole Yerushalmi verbatim in the Bavli edition. And there it's different, the variations. And here on the bottom, you'll see, on the bottom of every page, it says, Nuschas Yerushalmi Shebabavli. Because that's from there, and that Nusach, it seems, is better than the Yerushalmi in front of us. This is a superior Nusach. So I don't know exactly where it comes from, but it is supposed to be superior. Okay? So there it says, the flip side of this as well. Anytime Basin doesn't bring a bull, an individual does not bring a sheep or lamb. So, and then it continues. It's like the Shmuel Passer Masnisa. By the way, the Pnei Moshe brings us all down. The first Pnei Moshe. Shmuel Passer Masnisa. Shmuel explains the brisa. The rov u'miut. This is the only thing which we are contingent on is a majority and minority. Achlu rov, right? If it's majority, majority of the congregation sin. Hoyle Basin Mavian Par, since Basin brings a bull and a yachim, maybe kispo sira. The individual is not bringing a lamb or a sheep. Achlumiut, if minority ate, this is all not in the Gemara. If minority ate, Hoyle Basin Mavian Par, since the basin does not bring a bull, right? Hayachid, maybe kispo sira. The individual brings a kispo sira. Now that's true according to Shmuel. Shmuel says, if it's a minority sin and Basin does not bring therefore a korban, so then the individual is bringing a korban because that's Shmuel Shita. Shmuel Shita is a Ras Basin only patters where Basin itself is bringing a korban, not where Basin itself is exempt from a korban. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold that way. Rabbi Yochanan we know holds that even where Basin himself is not bringing a korban, as long as Basin paskind, still the individual is exempt from a korban. So how does Rabbi Yochanan learn that brisa? So
who brings a korban?
Nobody. Nobody.
I don't understand that.
You don't understand theologically. You understand it. So what? Rabbi Yochanan's theology is that exempt. There's a technicality, So nobody brings a korban. What can I tell you? Okay?
Where does he learn that?
Good question. It's not clear. Rumor's going to ask that later on. Rumor's going to come up with an answer. Rabbi Yochanan Pasam Masdisa. Right, now we're back in the Gemara here. Rabbi Yochanan Pasam Masdisa Barayas Basin. So Rabbi Yochanan says the dichotomy is rather in the type of a raw. It can't be the mount, because of whatever basin paskins, whether a minority sin, majority sin, the individuals are exempt, right? So rather means like there's the dichotomies in the type of psak basin made. Holy basin lakers kol aguf. It basin to eradicate the entire mitzvah from the Torah. Holy basin, since basin, here again we have to switch because it's wrong as it's written in front of us. Holy basin should be ein mevi'in par. Since basin don't bring a bull, because the halacha is they have to be oiker mitzvahs umashir mitzvahs. They have to uproot part of the mitzvah, but leave another part of the mitzvah, right? So since holy basin, no, it's a Mishnah. We're going to have a Mishnah. Hopefully we'll get the Mishnah tonight and hammer it out. Holy basin, since they don't bring a bull, and a hayachid maybe kisbo zero. Sorry, it should be yachid maybe kisbo zero. Since the basin doesn't bring a bull, so an individual does bring a kisbo zero, because that psak of base is not the type of base in psak which exempts you from being a korban, and vice versa. If they paskin to cancel some and sustain some, hoil here it should be since based in Mevian par, since based in would bring a cow, although not necessarily if there's only a minority. So in that case, hayochid eino mevi kisbos here. The individual does not bring a sheep or lamb. Okay, Shmuel said masnisa. Now, this I'm not going to torture you with this because I didn't feel like torturing myself. It's meaning that it's citing a brisa from the Sifri, not a brisa in front of us. Okay, it's not relevant. We don't have to get into what exactly the brisa says. Pnei Moshe brings it down. I'm not going to get into it. But Shmuel, that must nisa adayin and yoyim, but the brisa which is brought down from the Sifri, I would still say milut hakol she'asu chayavin. If minority of the congregation sin, then they still have to bring their own individual korbanos. They still have to bring their own individual korbanos. She'ein beisim mevin baleim par. Why? Because since base is not bringing a bull on them, they have to bring their own korbanos, right? So I might say it's only a minority. How do I know that even if it's a majority? I mean, then it says am ha'oretz. That means afilu kulo, afilu rubo. Even if the majority, even if the entirety of Am Yisrael, it should be afilu rubo, afilu kulo. Same idea. Even majority, minority, even if everybody in Am Yisrael sinned, and after Beis Paskin it's mutter to do, but they all sinned out of their own ignorance, they had never heard that Beis in Psak. Nevertheless, in that case, each and every individual has to bring his own korban. So it says, "Me'am oretz ba'asoso." It says by individual korban, right? If individuals commit sins, even if they're part of an entire nation which committed a sin, and even after Beis and Paskin, but if they sinned as individuals, each one has to bring a korban according to Shmuel. Okay? So it says, what does Rabbi Yochanan do with that price? So what does he do with that? Rabbi Yochanan, but the Masnisa, Adayin ani oimem mi et hakol she'osu b'lo horoya chayovin. If a minority of the congregation did the Avera without a psak of base, then of course they have to bring their own korbanos, right? Shekaim boroya ain't basin mevi'in par. But perhaps it's only because if basin did paskin, they wouldn't bring a cow. Now, a bull. Now it's true that if basin had paskin, they wouldn't bring a bull, and the individuals wouldn't bring a korban according to him, because that's his unique shita, right? But I might say, perhaps the minority of the congregation, they bring korbanos when they committed a sin in unison, because even if Basin were to paskin for them, they still Basin wouldn't have brought the bull. However, now the flip side is missing from here. The flip side should be, but what about if a minority did with a psaka based in? In other words, based on an erroneous psaka based in. Maybe they also have to bring a sheep or a lamb individually. That's what it has to tell us, Rabbi Yochanan has to tell us, that in that case, no. Now, I'm not sure if he learns this out somehow from Mama Oretz or not. Then in that case, they are schlepped after the Beis Din, and they don't bring their own korban, which is very difficult, because his flip sides don't really work. And the Gemara is going to ask on this momentarily. Shmuel says, Avol hey mevin kisvos here. So Shmuel holds it based in Paskin, the minority follow their psak, so every individual brings a kisvos zero, even a majority, right? If based in Paskin, but the individuals follow their own cognizance, then they bring their own kisvos zero. But certainly when a minority sin, even the basin did paskin, then they bring their own kisvos zero. Rabbi Yochanan lo hey mevin kisvos zero. You don't say the base of Pascha, even until the minorities in the base themselves does not bring a korban, they too do not bring a korban. Now, according to Shmuel, the Yolif Chayav Mechayav. Shmuel learns an individual who does an Avein on his own cognizance, is, even if it's a majority of the community of sin, brings his own korban from an individual who did his Avera as part of a minority of the congregation, even though Raw is based in. Okay, there's a continuum there. How exactly works? Whatever. But one is chayav and the other is chayav. They're both liable. That I understand. Makes sense. I'll die to Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, how does that work? He's learning that a minority of the congregation, which did Boraz based in his potur, because based in Paskin. Yet at the same time, if the minority of the congregation sinned without a Rosh based in, well, since it based in a Paskin, they wouldn't have brought a bull, so therefore now the basin didn't Paskin, so then each and every individual is liable to bring his own korban. It doesn't flow. He's trying to learn out that each individual brings his own korban. In the case where there was no Rosh basin, as the flip side of nobody bringing a korban, or based in Paskin, the minority
sin based on basis of the psak? How can the ptur, if we extrapolate from the ptur to the chiyuv? There's something wrong, there's something choppy. The Gemara doesn't address the issue anymore of that. Just makes a notation that there's something choppy there. I'm sure it's like, in the Bavli we have the word kashya. It's difficult, but one could find an answer. The Gemara doesn't bother going into it. Masnisa Mapriya Shmuel. Now, following Brisa argues on Shmuel. Following Brisa says, for all doil of chatasor asher chata. If an individual sins, and he becomes cognizant of his sin which he committed, so then he brings a korban. Baby, then he brings yotza mumar lakum. This precludes a meshumah. Meshumah, even if meshumah doesn't mean korban. Now, the thing is like this. What it means is that, let's say you're meshumah, right? He would have eaten the cheeseburger. Well, cheeseburger is a bad example because it's not a chiyuv korban. He would have eaten the filet mignon, right? Even though you told him, it has chaylev in it, he would have eaten it anyway. But in this case, he didn't know it was a filet mignon. He thought it was a regular kosher steak, right? So in this case, the Chazal say, nevertheless, he doesn't bring a korban. In this case, he was shayim, but it wouldn't be shayim midiyosel. Had he been aware that it was a filet mignon, he wouldn't eat it anyway. So he wants to chapan do tshuva just because it wasn't filet mignon. We don't let him do that. That doesn't work. Okay. So the question is according to Shmuel. It's a cute question. The way I'm learning the way the Yerushalmi says it. He says if when based in paskin something is mutter. You did it on your own cognizance, right? Right? You did it on your own cognizance anyway. Blissfully unaware, based in psak that it's mutter. And then he find out. And he thought, I did an isser, right? I did an isser. And then he found out, no, based in paskin it's mutter. But of course, based in paskin it's mutter erroneously. But you don't know that. Nevertheless, you bring your own korban, right? You bring your own korban. Now, so wait a minute. This guy is not a Shabbat Midyoso. Had he known what base that it was chaylev, but had he known the base in a paskin that it was okay, he would have eaten it anyway, right? Yet Shmuel's saying that he brings a korban because his sin was independent of the Rosh Beistin. So here too, let's say the same thing by the Meshumad. True! Had he known, he would have eaten anyway. But this is independent sin. At this point in time, this sin is divorced from the general issue, right? Just like Baraz based in Shmuel says, yes, it's true, I know it based in Pasti, he would have done it anyway. But right now, he's sitting on his own cognizance, he brings his own korban. So told the same thing, it's a Meshumad La'akum, right? It's true that had he known that it's a filet mignon, he wouldn't eat anyway. But right now, since he didn't know, he should have to bring his own korban. So how come it says in Meshumad La'akum doesn't bring his own korban? And where it doesn't answer the question. More just leaves it true. More asks another question, Shmuel. Says more, basically the same question over a different form. No, it's not. Sorry, take it back. Masizah Pliyah Shmuel is another question, Shmuel. It says, Nevesh kitechto. Achas kitechto. Of a soul, this Gemara we had way back at the beginning of the Masechta. A soul sins. Achas techto, one sins. Ba'asayso, when it commits Aver sins. Harelu Miutzin, these are three exclusions. Hatoila ba'atzmo chayev, hatoila based in potter. Somebody who's contingent on himself is chayev. Somebody who's contingent on basin is exempt. Right? Now, this argues on the other part of Shmuel, because this seems to say quite clearly that if you are contingent on basin, machdish ken chiluk, it doesn't matter if there was a minority of people who sin, and basin doesn't bring a korban, or majority of people who sin, and basin does bring a korban. Lamaisa, you're title on basin. So you're title on basin, you're potter from bringing your own personal korban. Hadah pliga Shmuel, this argues that Shmuel v'leis l'kiyum, and there's no way for Shmuel to refute this. Now the truth is, Rabbi Zira's tradition name of Shmuel is based on the same as Rabbi Yochanan, that wouldn't have been a problem. because he would have agreed basically with these two prices. But it's a refutation of Chevrai Shita Name Shmuel. We have two questions on Chevrai Shita Shmuel, both aspects. On the question of whether an individual on his own cognizance, even the majority of the Sibur sits in on the Beis Basin's psak, whether he has to bring his own korban, and Shmuel said he does, and now we have the question of if that's the case, how come the Mumer La'akum, who ate a filet mignon, not known as filet mignon at this point in time, why does he bring his own korban as well? Should be a parallel case. And on the second aspect of Shmuel, where Shmuel said that if it's a minority of the congregation, I'll be psak based in, then the individuals have to bring their own korban, and that it's difficult. We have this drasha which tells us that somebody who's toilet b'das based in is exempt from being a korban. Okay? So we have to refute both aspects of Shmuel Halacha. That was a very difficult Gemara.
Is this not focused on the Bavli too?
It beats me. I don't think so.
I don't remember it.
I don't remember either, but it's Horayos.
I would have remembered Rabbi Yochanan's Shita.
Yeah.
About being putter from being.
Yeah. Some of this is in the Bible, some of it is not. This is the truth is Mara Aponim does bring down on the previous page based on part. Some of it is in the Bible, so it seems like at least part of it is there. Okay, Hora based in Yodu Shato. It gets much easier. Hora based in Yodu Shato. I think Horayos is generally like this. It's easier, it goes along. Hora based in Yodu Shato. Basin made a mistake, Paskin, and then they knew that they made a mistake. But Chosben they reneged. But they didn't yet bring their korban. And a guy went and did it afterwards, not having known the basin was chayzer boy. He didn't know the basin had reneged on their erroneous psak. The Rishon says the guy is still exempt because he's still following basin. I don't even know the reneged. We're not so sure. It could be, he's liable because he should have found out what the current status, what the law books say right now. What's the question? If he was sat at home, he's certainly liable to bring his own korban because he should have found out, right? Should have gone out and found out what basis passing today. Should have went and read the Beis Din Gazette. Medina Sayam Potter. But if he went to Medina Sayam, he's exempt. Now the truth is, it means if he's on his way out, so he's exempt. And now the way it's not clear exactly from the what does it mean chayiv and potter, but the way the korban Moshe was, chayiv means chayiv and osham toli if he's at home. Still not chayiv of korban mamish, only osham toli, because we don't know whether he would have heard or not heard. Whereas if he went to chutzlaretz, he's certainly potter, because we assume that he definitely didn't hear and definitely didn't have the capacity to debate the reneg.
Doesn't the rule of chazaka kick in here and all that? You have a chazaka that's in basically.
No, because the question is his personal liability. Yeah, chazakas he didn't hear, but the question is whether he's culpable for not having heard. It's kind of like Omer Mutter Shoyeg or Korov Lamezidu. Somebody thinks that he's Mutter because he didn't learn. What's his status? So here's a similar idea.
No, not about not hearing, but the chazak is that until you hear otherwise, chazak.
No, it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. If the law changes, it might be incumbent upon you to hear that the law has changed. If they change the speed limit, you have to find out.
I'm trying to think like, the Arab is, and there's a green flag in the.
But that's different. It's different because that's not
until the flag goes down.
Yeah, but that's different. That's special halacha by Shabbos because of misasek, all different reasons, not necessarily doesn't apply here. Okay. In this case, the guy who's traveling, I concede that he's more closer to P'tur than Chayv, and the question is what exactly Rakiv is. I don't think the Gemara is going to speak about it. Benazai said, here is Benazai, although he didn't appear at first mission, but he does play a role, or maybe he did. I don't think he appeared at first mission. Benazai said, no, he's the one who's been speaking about the whole time. No, he doesn't, didn't appear at first mission. Benazai says, Mashna Zem Mina Yeshiv Beso. What's the difference between this guy and guy sitting at home? So Rabbi Kiva responds, Yeshiv Beso Efshar Shelo Shishma, the guy sitting home, he could have heard, therefore, at best, he's Chayiv Noshim Toli, certainly not a flow altogether.
The guy's traveling, lawyer have I couldn't heard anything. Okay? Rabbi Avishim, Rabbi Shimon Lakish. Now this actually goes back to the previous sugya. Not going in our Mishnah. We'll come back to our Mishnah momentarily. But Avishim, Rabbi Shimon Lakish said, Mas Nisa, the Mishnah, which is talking about the Mishnah Pas said a based in Paskin, and one of them knew they made a mistake, and he went and he did differently. So according to Gil and Ephraim previously, he's exempt from Malchus because we can't give him Malchus, right? Forget about the Korban issue. He's exempt from Malchus because we can't give him Malchus, right? So who's that like? Who's the guy who's talking about can go shiur and azay? We already said there has to be a chosh v'talmid, not a member of the Sanhedrin, but it's a chosh v'talmid shiur and azay. Yesh's name is sin for the Sanhedrin. Manakim says what we're talking about. If he stood up and said, Rabbi Sai, Shimunat Mumkin, you all guys are all wrong, and he proves them wrong, and then their psak was on them void. So it's nice to talk about. So if they said, no, Ben Azai, you're wrong, so then Tibatora, so then his psak is not valid. In other words, by definition, he's wrong, right? El Kinechem, we're talking about it, is very logical. B'shazel made b'shuvaso, b'zel made b'shuvaso. Each guy stood on his own ground. So the Sanhedrin stood their ground, and he stood their ground. Horayos netzlo, Rod, their psak v'zbiyim is not a valid psak. Shalo silkoso, because they couldn't repudiate him. Eitzachim horoya, however, vis-a-vis others, it is a valid psak, shalo silkom, because he was not able to refute them. Okay? So it's just like one of these elu ve'elu disputes.
What about Yachid, the Rabbin, Halacha?
What?
What about Halacha?
That's for the others, but not for Ben Azai. Because he knew that they were wrong. That's for the others. Right? Lamaisa, he couldn't go out in public and paskin against them for the public. That would be Zokin Mamre, right? But he himself was not allowed to do it. He shouldn't have done it nonetheless, because he knew better, okay? So he said, it's true he won't get Malchus, again, going to the Ephraim's tribe. It's true he won't get Malchus, but a Shoige, you can't call him in that case, okay? Yerushalmi Horayos calls him a Shoige because he thought he had to follow Beistin. And therefore, whatever halachas or kabbalas applied to any other Shoge guy applied to him as well. The Bavli, the Yerushalmi holds that no, he's amazing. He's not in the same category as halachas of anybody else who sins based on Beistin. Because he should have known better than to listen to them. But Malchus he's not going to get. Why? Because Malchus, who's going to give him a throne, who's going to adjudicate the case. Okay? Says Rabbi Mona by Tanchum. Now, this business with Rabbi Shimon ben Azai, this is not argue Rabbi Mona by Tanchum. Rabbi Mona by Tanchum said, Omar Nichlasu Mea, if 100 guys entered to the court, Achiro Kulon, that all of them have to pass. Now, here you see clearly, yesterday wasn't sure if that was a question or a statement. Here you see clearly it's a statement. If 100 guys in court, everybody has to agree. So it's a very interesting thing what the Gemara, I'm not even sure what the Gemara's Havamim is, that Shimon Azai was a member of the Sanhedrin. It wasn't. It was a Talmud sitting in front of the Sanhedrin. But I guess according to the number of 100, that will include all the Talmudim sitting in front of the Sanhedrin. I'm not clear. Now at this juncture, I want to tell you a fascinating thing, actually, which I should have mentioned last night, but I didn't because I hadn't seen it last night. Before the Masechta Horayos, there was a Hashmata from the Gilyon Ephraim. And it's a very long Hashmata, and it's a very, very Haskalah thing. Extremely Haskaladik. And he wants to say this is a funny number, this 100 number, right? Where did they get 100, right? What is this business of 100? 100 dayonim, right? So 70, right?
That's a mayor abundance.
So no, he wants to say that brings down that the Essenes had a shita that you have to have 100 dayanim in the Sanhedrin. And he wants to say that sometimes Chazal were willing to, as opposed to Stoking, where they're radically opposed to the Sadducees, they're willing to give in on certain matters to the Yissim. And therefore sometimes they actually had 100 members of the Sanhedrin or to placate the Yissim. And then he wants to say, it's an amazing thing at the end, it's too long to go into, obviously, it's not time, but at the end he wants to say, there's a certain cryptic Gemara where it says that originally there was Hillel and Menachem as the Rosh Hashiva and the Ab Beistin. And Yotza Menachem v'nichnas Shammai. And the question is, where did Menachem go? What did they do? They kicked him out of being the Abezdin. So he wants to say Menachem was an Isin. And he held that you have to have 100 Dayonim. And this was the time when the Anshe Knesset Agdol, I guess, were getting, what's the word, being diminished by attrition, going down from 120 to 70. So at the point where it got below 100, Menachem felt he could no longer stay, because he was of the opinion it had to be 100, and therefore he left at that point. So I know Gilad Fry is basically making this all up as he goes along. But it's a cool and interesting shita, and if somebody has the time, it's interesting to go through. Okay, we don't. So in any event, so the Gemara's question is, over here is how come? If Shimon ben Azai disagrees, so how can they not take him into account? How can they consider psak based on the all the passing together? So Pasal Lo B'Shlo Nichnas. He wants to say that it's talking about a case where he didn't come into the account. And again, I think it's Pashna, isn't it obvious? So says Gemara, now an amazing question though. Im B'Shlo Nichnas Ma'akev. What do you mean? If he didn't come into the account, is an impediment. So for some reason, I don't know exactly where they get this from. Maybe Dafka according to the scenes, maybe they're 100 Dafka, but it seems that if they're all there and they need 100, or even if they don't need 100 perhaps, they all have to be part of it. They all have to be part of the cheshbon. So Pasla Karebi. There's more that's going like Rebbe. The Rebbe Amar En L'cha Marki Vel Mufla Shall based in Belud. Only if the Mufla basin is out of town, he's in Lud, the most prominent member of the Sanhedrin, or the leader of the Sanhedrin, then that's a problem in the Psak. But here, Ben Azai, he was a very sharp Talmud, but they're allowed to paskin excluding him. Okay, so therefore, it's a very cryptic Gemara, very strange what exactly Gemara is saying, but somehow Gemara is of the opinion that Ben Azai has to be included, and then it comes out he doesn't be included, and therefore you can have this issue where he knows basically made a mistake, but he wasn't able to convince them, and then he stands on his own, etc., like we all learned in the last Mishnah. Okay? Now the Gemara switches to our sugya, to the issue of our sugya. Let's go, so it says Gemara, when it's based in reneges. Okay, Varamana Batana, my Nichlu Sumer, Ramana Tana who said, this, according to the other friend, this Isian Shita, Nichlu Sumer, all 100 came in, Ad shiur Kulam, or they off the Paskin. Ab Chazar came when they reneged, they off the Paskin on the reneging, okay, or Rov Kat, or is it the majority which is there at the time? So it says tomorrow, wait a minute. Pshitalach, if you're going to say, Pshitalach here in the Yerushalmi, the Mashbiach says, and so means the same that the Bible says, Imtim Tzeloimar. I don't think we had this language anywhere else in the Yerushalmi, though. I think this is the first time it really crops up. But if Pshitalach, if you're going to say Rov, they eat a majority of the initial group, right? Rov Ma. Rov of what? Rov HaRoya, Rov of the 100 originally Paskin, or Rov of Mishtaya, or Rov of whoever's left. Meaning, okay, Rov of whoever's here now won't be enough. But does it mean Rov of the initial number, the Rov Mishtaya? What do you mean by that? Echavita, what's the case? Nichlesu if 100 came into Paskin the first time, Umesu Manasar and 10 died. So you start from the 120 to the 70, and along the lines they didn't replace because they were attrition. What do you think of all this? Very weird, right? Okay? So, but that's what it sounds like, right? So, 10 of them died. So now we're down to 90. 90 Dayanim on the wall. Rov al-Roya Chamishim. So what do we need? Rov of the initial count, Chamishim Echad, 51. I'm sorry, skip. Intam Rov al-Roya, if we're going to say it's the majority of the initial count, that's 51. Now, if it's the majority of a real Sanhedrin, that would be 36, right? But if it's the majority of the initial Sanhedrin, it should have to be 51. Intam Rov Mishtayim, it's going to say it's the majority of the amount which remains, then it's Arbaim Mishesh, it's 46, and the Gemara does not resolve this. Okay, very strange. Says more can fight them. Hivish Chatos, this is a Gemara we had back in Gittin, the Yerushalmi parallel Gemara. Hivish Chatos, a guy, and that's also in the Bible, you see on the side. Hivish Chatos, a guy separate side of Chatos. For any of it, it's not mature which one. V'nischarish, and then he became a deaf mute. On Nishtata or insane, on Nishtabit he became a Meshuman. Why is this brought down here? Because the next case, Oshechoru based in mutter lechol chelev, or based in paskin, this avera which he committed was not really an avera. And then afterwards, of course, he became lucid again, or he became able to hear and see, hear and talk again, or he became a Baal Tshuva. So Rabbi Yochanan too bad. Nitches chatos. So this chatos at a time when it wasn't suitable can never be brought. No, this chatos is not lo niches chatos, so it's still suitable. Rabbi Yisrael Bun Amar Rabbi Acha Mechalif Shmuel also. Rabbi Yisrael Bun said the Ravacha switched the names. Lo ase milse Rabbi Yochanan pliga milse. So the words of Rabbi Yochanan will not argue on that which was said the Mar B'Shem Barbo B'Shem Rabbi Yossi. And that which B'Shem named Rabbi Yossi. And I don't know why we don't want them to argue, but we don't. What is Shem Barbo named Rabbi Yossi? He said Gois. It says here Goy Kos, but it's a mistake. You see the Yerushalmi Bavli and the Gilin Ephraim. Everybody brings down in the Gemara in Bavli and Gittin, and you start in Yerushalmi and Gittin. It says Goses, somebody who's dying. Zarkin lo midam chatos midam hashamo. You can sprinkle the blood upon him from his chatos from Rosham. So the Gemara felt, well, that shouldn't be in line with Rabbi Yochanan. It should be nitcha because he's a goses, right? So it must be that Rabbi Yochanan, in fact, told that there's no nitcha. That's a very shvacha. The Gemara itself is going to point out there's no comparison. A goses is not nitcha. He might die, but he's not dead yet. As long as he's alive, he's still shy to korban. But for some reason, Rabbi Acha felt that that's a contradiction. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan can hold that there's dichui, yet at the same time hold of this, that you can sprinkle blood on a goses. So therefore, he switched the name and said Rabbi Yochanan is the one who holds there is no dichui. It does get pushed off, and Hashem Elosh is the one who holds that there is dichui. Rabban the Kesar and Amrin, they said, and Rabbi Chia said in the name of Rabbi Ami, and there it says the name of Rabbi Asi. In any event, he said, Chad Machlaf, Chia and Rabbi Ami, not named Rabbi Ami. Chad Machlaf, one talked to switch names. The Chad Ramah, and the other said, no. It should be Kitty Estaya, like we said it. As you say in the publishing world, Stet. Leave it the way it was. You don't have to change the girsa. Man, it should be man de lo machlef. He who doesn't switch the names. Leislei be elaine kishuaya. He doesn't hold that that these are considered to be. He doesn't hold of these. I think kishuaya means these questions. I'm not 100% sure what that means. He doesn't hold these kishuaya. But in any event, what he means is that it doesn't hold that. He doesn't hold that it's any comparison, because a guy who's insane can't bring a korban. A guy who's a chevish can't bring a korban. A guy who's a mishumat can't bring a korban. A guy who, based in paskin, he wouldn't bring a korban at that point in time. But a guy says as long as he can get the korban in before he dies, so what's the problem? So there's no comparison. There's no dichui. It's not relevant to say such a thing. Okay, now the one says a really cool Gemara. Next Gemara. According to the opinion which holds that a guy became Meshumah based in Pas... No, not that case. That's not a good case. The last case. Based in Paskin, that the korban is not... this korban is not necessary. Because this is not Avera. So how's he going to sacrifice the korban? Which Kohen is going to accept this korban? It's very bad about the kasha. Kohanim are not going to accept it. They're going to say, when he brings this korban based on Mikdash, they're going to say, Rabbi, and I'm going to bring this korban based in good open season on Chalev. There's no issue anymore, right? So it says more miukabli manner. So it's more a very simple answer. You have to let him wait. He'll keep the korban in his backyard until Basin reneges and says it's also again. So there's no dichui. You can wait till such time comes as he can bring it. Or it says here Ella, but the Shara so says or it could be there about case Shaya Kohen. It should be Ovar v'hikri v'keeper. If the Kohen himself didn't hold the basin, Kohen said, those Zionim, they don't know what they're talking about. I'll sacrifice your korban for you because you're a sinner. Okay, so in that case, the korban does work in that case. Okay, the Kohen might have done something wrong, but
I was just going to say, is he allowed to do that?
No, he shouldn't have done it. He's abusing his kahuna. Right, his is not the question.
Even though he was right.
Right. Okay. Now, this is also a fascinating case. this is even more fascinating in my opinion. Let's say a God of the Torah comes to you and says, you're the Kohen, and says, listen, I know the base in Paskin against me, but I hold it's incumbent upon me to bring this korban. Is the Kohen allowed to accept it from him and be mocker for him, l'shitosle, right? You know, the truth is the Kohanim a lot of times have to rely on the say-so of the owner that he was chayav a korban, right? They're always risking that, because maybe the guy Taka wasn't chayav a korban. They weren't chayav b'day reshim shiur. So the guy, but here's an extreme case. The guy says, I have a choshev elof, I have smicha, you know, I'm pasking that to bring a korban. It's true other people are arguing with me, but you should sacrifice my korban on my say-so. So what happens in this case? So it says, the Gemara is a classically like Yerushalmi practical question. How does it actually happen, right? So it says more no. You shouldn't. Yamti not shiachsu ben basin. Yes, so you should wait until basin reneges. You shouldn't accept on based on the say-so of this individual.
Can Fajin make it into an Ola? Or
No, can't touch. No, they're two different. Can't do it. Command of Eloi ches chatoso. According to opinion that the chatas is still sacrificable. Do we say tolodos harayik harayik? Do we say the ramifications of a psak of the based on like the psak? We're going to give scenarios. And what about harayik harayik? What about a psak within a psak? What's the story with these? Mind sheets tarfu. They join together. The Gemara is going to explain now what these cases are. Hey Chavira, what's the case of tolodos harayik harayik? The ramifications of the psak. Ochlu tzibur chalovim. The tzibur part ate chaylev. The refusal korban is the same, right? And then they sacrificed korbanos, and basically said, no, it's not chaylev. So what do? They took their korbanos and made barbecues. So now they committed two averos, and based on their reneg. They committed two averos, they committed chaylev, and as a result of chaylev, they committed also, as a result of Pesach and Psak, they also committed shchutei chutz. They shechted all the korbanos in the backyard. So it's based on bringing two korbanos. One for having paskin chaylev mutter, and the other for having paskin that mimela that these animals are not valid korbanos, and therefore having brought about shchutei chutz. They didn't paskin directly on these animals, but it was a ramification, it was a tolada of their psak. Okay? It's a cute question, also not a bavli. So it says Gemara, we're going to say that the ramifications of psak are like the psak. Two korbanos, one for the psak of Rav and the other for the fact that they were rendered shchutei chutz as a result. We're going to say that the ramifications of psak are not like the psak, based on exempt on the shchutei chutz issue. They're liable on being matir chaylev, but not on the shchutei chutz issue. It says more kad pshitaloch. It says you're kini. But it should be kad, according to Shari. It's the same thing for our purposes. If you can resolve this issue of Tolodas Haraya Koraya, let me ask you another question, which is a question just alluded to before. Haraya is Manshit Sarbu. A psak within a psak. What's the case of psak within a psak? Horror based in Chaylev Kuya Shel Yamin. This is a psak within a psak means it falls into, it's two subcategories of a broader category. The first one was a ramification. Right? A led to B. What about A and B are both subsets of C? Right? Not A led to B, but A and B are both subsets of C. That's our question now. Right? So it says because it's more likely to say that B is a result of A, so you're liable on both. What B is not a result of A, but A and B are both related to some overriding category called C? That's the question. So based on mutter. First they paskin is a waffling basin. First they paskin the fats on the right kidney are permitted. The shell small of the left kidney, it should be the shell michsetz in the nuskha on the bottom, and of the diaphragm are also. Then they said the opposite. They said the right kidney's fats are forbidden, and the left and the diaphragm are mutter. Right? Ochlu roba rishonim, and a majority of Am Yisrael ate are based on the first psak. For roba shnina, majority of Am Yisrael ate based on the second psak. So based on that was liable to korban. How many? Each time it's time you're going to say, well, it was one general issue of mistaking chaylev. So only based on this written korban. Each time you're going to say that they don't join together. Chayav each time the base is liable to two korbanos. Okay.
Was it one Helen that based in, Psaka?
No, it was two labels. But it was one general issue of Chaylev. That's the issue.
But it sounds like
Yeah, you're right. By Yochid it might be considered a question of Chaylev. For some reason the Gemara doesn't want it. In Psak Basin, as long as they're still waffling in the Psak, the Gemara wants to include that as one thing. Okay? It's not the issue of mice, it's the issue of clarification of Psak, I guess. It's a different issue. Now the next case, Shtei Rois Baver Achas, the Gilin Ephraim changes the gears dramatically. The Or Samech changes the gears dramatically. If you look at the Ephraim, changes Shtei Averos Baroya Achas, but Shtei Rois Baver Achas. The Shai Tzol also changes gears pretty dramatically, but he brings in less out extraneous materials. So I'm going to learn that the Shai Tzol, well, at least doesn't start with a change of gears. But you should know, I'm just telling you one pshat, and the other pshatim are totally different. Okay? Shtei Rois Baver Achas, Mayin Sheit Starfu. You have two psakim in the same aver. What's the story? What do you mean two psakim in the same aver? Achlu rof. Let's say the majority of the congregation ate chaylev, right? And then instead of a shachtu, the way the Shaitir so changes gears, it says here the chazu based in merasim, based in reneg. Same thing we just had before. The shuv, but then they paskin not the different, not the other kidney, but the same kidney. There's a paskin first on the kid, right kid, let's say right kidney that's motor. They were negligent paskin on the right kidney again. And then again, achlu rov. Then the majority ate again. Okay? So it's the same kidney twice. Al daiti Meir, Kohen Rabbi Meir, who says later on that if based in renegs, and somebody who didn't know about the reneging goes and does, based on their saying so, he's liable chatas, because when based in reneg, that's it, it's finished. You should, if he didn't, even though he didn't know the chazorah, he's independent, he's on his own, right? So daiter meir should be chayovin shtay, they're liable twice, right? Because the reneging in of itself separates the first psak from the second psak. He doesn't know if our Mishnah has to do with hearing, not hearing. In and of itself, reneging separates. Okay? So you have the chayv too. Al daiter Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon, who holds, no, as long as he didn't hear the base and reneged an individual, he's still considered to be nigra after base, and he doesn't have to bring his own korban. So to here sits in the middle, right? Even though they're a chazer, but obviously it wasn't a total chazorah, because they reneged afterwards on the reneging. So therefore here it could join them together because it's the same issue of psak. So he says chayovin achas. They're only liable for one between the two of them. Okay? Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Achlu miut b'rishon. Now, what about if you only had a minority who ate the first psak, or miut b'rishon, a minority the second psak? But if you join them together, the minority from the first and the minority the second time, they'll make up a majority, right? So the same idea. Daiter meir, corner and meir. It should be pturim. They're exempt. Basin brings no korban in this case. Why? Because each of them is a minority, and the chazorah breaks it apart. Right? It's like Yediyah ben Asayim, the Helish Day and Lamos and Yediyah ben Asayim breaks it apart. Right? A daiter Rabbi Shimon should be chayovin because the chazorah in the middle is not enough. There has to be some sort of additional element. I don't know exactly what it is, but the chazorah in the middle is not enough because l'mafreya, when they matter the second time, that jumps over the chazorah and hooks back to the first psak. Obviously, with some connection between the two. Amr Zer said, so what is the machlokas? Zer says v'shos beineom. The nafkamina between the two of them is whether time is sufficient. Time is sufficient between, in other words, now not in the other issue. The case is a guy did on the base of Pesach Basin, which was overturned already by Basin. So the mayor says, Amar Neislo shows such Yishma, if enough time has elapsed that he should have heard, even though he didn't hear, so he's liable. So he could have gone and found out. Rabbi Shimon says it should be Achi Yishma until he actually hears. Okay? So in other words, it's got to reach his ears. So the Kohen Sharet Yisrael, again, the Sharet Yisrael shot, other people give different shatim, we extrapolate from that machlok. Just like over there, Remeir holds, in and of itself, the time which is the chazara with elapsed time is sufficient. So here he holds that the chazara, which Basin made, is a sufficient break between the two psakim. And if it's through the roll each time, bring 2 korbanos. If it's a minority each time, they don't join together. Rabbi Shimon holds, no, they're actually, just like Rabbi Shimon holds over there, that it's not considered to be that you're independent based until you actually heard that based reneged. Even if they did renege, you actually have to hear it. And even if there's not a lot of time elapsed, if you didn't actually hear it, you're still exempt because you're still considered to be linked to based in. So too, if based reneged in the middle, since we see afterwards that they reneged on the reneging, so that's not sufficient to create a gap between the two. So there, because it has to be like a definite thing. So therefore, if it was a majority each time, even if it was a majority each time, it's still only 1 korban. And if it's a minority each time, they do join together to make you liable for that 1 korban. The true leaps over the gap. Okay, again, this is going to Shara to Yisrael. I'm learning it. I don't know if it's the right shot, not the right shot, but again, Kliyun Ephraim chooses a whole bunch of extraneous material, and so does Yerushalmi, so I'd rather learn it this way. It's the simplest way to learn. Okay? B'tanike. We learned like this as well. Hora Beis M'shuka Elya. V'yochi M'shuka Tachto. Beis Pask in the upper market. The individuals in the lower market. Beis and Babayis, Beisins in the house. V'yochi Elya and the other guys in the second floor. Potter, this is like Rabbi Shimon, he's exempt. Achi Yishma Mamish, until he literally listens. Until he literally hears. Okay? Okay, boy, going back to our Mishnah. I'll die to Rabbi Kiva. It said, according to Rabbi Kiva, dying who's suffix. It's still a suffix. What does that mean? It's still a suffix. If a guy is between 2 boundaries, and here in the bottom it changes gears in the Nusel to Yerushalmi Shabavli, he's between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, right? In that case, Rabbi Kiva is not sure. So Rabbi Eliezer says, so what's talking about now we're coming back down to the to our mission, trying to figure out what's in Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says, if a guy is on the way to Chutz La'aretz, he's already exempt. He's already exempt from a korban, right? If he's at home, it's an Asham Toli, because he should have heard. If it's not the Chutz La'aretz, he's definitely exempt from a korban, because Ristami didn't hear, and therefore I didn't have the capacity to hear, so if it's exempt from a korban, he's still totally basin. Rabbi Akiva, no. If he's at home, so then, what? Even if he's on the way, he's still subject to Noshim Toli, right? And even if he's between the Tchumen, between Eretz and Chutz La'aretz, he should have it was still Noshim Toli. Only once he's passed out of Eretz Yisrael altogether, then I say, he couldn't have heard it, therefore he's still considered to be linked to base, and therefore he doesn't bring his own korban. Okay? Says Rabbi Yam says Lo Choya. In terms of the majority, it says, of course, you'd have to know the majority. If only the majority of Am Yisrael sins, so then we bring a korban, right? What terms the majority of Am Yisrael? Acha Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael. People in the Chutz La'aretz, they don't count. Majority of people determine whether the row based on the Am Yisrael Chayte or not. The inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael, right? Here, Tuma. What about in terms of Tuma Hutra B'tzibur? Right, we know it's all Tuma Hutra B'tzibur. So that's Hilcha Acha Rovin Yichas Nazar goes of the majority of people who enter the Azara on Erev Pesach, do the Korban Pesach. So when I ask a tremendous kasha, this is definitely not in the Bali. When I ask, Ma Kol Kas V'Kas M'Sharim, we know the Shech Yerushalmi in 3 groups, right? So if you go after all the groups, and I don't know if all the groups means each one independently or all 3 together. I think it means all 3 together, because you'll see that's the conclusion of the Yerushalmi. We don't care about the stragglers. We only care about the first group. They determine. The first 3 groups end the base of Mitosh, so they determine are majority of them Tomei or Tor, that terms of the two Muhutra B'tzibur that you're not. Rabbi Yisrael said, Ashen B'chutz, now before they come in, Pei Misharin Atzma, we check them out. In other words, you take all 3 kitos together. In other words, before we divide them into 3 groups, we don't go by first come, first serve, we go after the majority that way. Okay? Rabbi Shimon Levi said, L'Re'iyah. Now, some of the portion leave it for Re'iyah. And in terms of Riyah means, it also would have to do with Tumah and Tara, because it means in terms of coming to the base HaMikdash, right? It would, according to Shari, so according to Bnei Moshe, has to do with Tumah Tara. It could be also has to do with what are the boundaries which a person is to be Eilul Regel for Yontif, right? In other words, where's the outer limits of what's considered to be a chiyuv for you to come? But the Gilyon Ephraim and the Yerushalmi both change this to Lahorah. In other words, what defines Eretz Yisrael in terms of the issue of Hara? We said Yosh Eretz Yisrael define what's considered to be, the majority of Am Yisrael. So what's considered to be the outer limits of Eretz Yisrael? So it's interesting because if that's the case, and you know like Yerushalmi Ephraim, it's not like Ole Bavel, Ole Mitzrayim. It's an independent. It's independent. It's Milavocha Masad Nachum Mitzrayim. It's actually like Ole Mitzrayim, not like Ole Bavel. It's the true Eretz Yisrael boundaries, not the boundaries of the Yishuv at the time of the second base on Mikdash time. So it's interesting that's it's broader boundaries, right? It's like from El Arish to beside an entire one of those places. Okay, doesn't say about the West Bank or over here or anything. Yeah, it doesn't. Sorry, not here. Sorry, so north south. Right, nice try. Right, I've heard of that. Right, the Chum Sher Yehuda said, "Time to Yerushalmi Levi." Reason Yerushalmi Levi, they look so that way. It's Vayashlam Vayisiyas Achad Kol Yisrael. It says all of Am Yisrael gathered together in Shlomo HaMelech. I guess I don't know exactly why Shlomo HaMelech is the point which we focus, but then it's talking about I guess because Pnei Moshe says they're Kahal Gadol, so I guess it's the Rov of Am Yisrael anyway, and it says that they came from Lavo Chamos to Nachum Mitzrayim. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Horror basin lacros called goof. A basin the uproot the entire body. Remember, I said we get this because this will be from before. Basin uproot the entire body of an issue in Torah. Or they said, "Ain't nida b'Torah." No nida. We wish basin would say things like this, right? Ain't nida b'Torah. Ain't Shabbos b'Torah. There's no Shabbos b'Torah. Ain't up with a Zorah b'Torah. All these things are okay. Harei l'P'Torah. They're exempt from bringing a korban. That's not a raw. That's pure lunacy, right? It's not a raw based in. It's only if Levato Miktas or L'Kayim Miktas. If they said part is true and part is not true. What's that? Ketzat. How so? Amr Yesh Nida B'Torah. They said there is a concept in the Torah of a Bar Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom. But if relations with a woman who's a Zava K'tana, she saw 1 day Ziva, and Allah is she only has to wait 1 day in the court of the mikvah. So have relations with her, you're potter. Or Yesh Shabbos the Torah, the Shabbos the Torah, Avomotzi Rishus L'Rishus HaYoch L'Rishus HaRam, but Otzah is potter, right? Yesh Avodah but there's Avodah Zarah in Torah, Avom Mishtach potter, if somebody bows out, but knows to take a specific aspect and they cancel that, Harei L'Chayavin, that's the case where they're liable to a korban Elim Dover. Shabbat says, V'Elam Dover, Dover V'lo Kol Aguf. Part of it, not the entirety. So there's more, what does it mean, Dover? Rabbi Chizkiah, Mi Dover. Low called the word. They actually darshan a mem. Problem is that there is no mem there. Why I was going to say that, right? He said mi mitzvos. For other mitzvah, low called mitzvos. Again, it doesn't say mi mitzvos there. Ksiv K says, well, wait a minute. Does it say these words the way you're darshan them? So it says one amazing thing. We actually had this back in Soit. I checked it up, but it's an amazing thing there too. Kadamar Rabbi Yam Mishem Rabbi Yochanan. It says gorin lidrosh. It should be mitchilosa ad seifa. We can cut letters off of other words, cut and paste. Cut letters off some words and put them in other words. So it says v'ne'lam dover there. So we change it. We take the mem off of ne'lam where it's not necessary, and make it v'nal mi davar. Okay, the Shaitan so wants to say, well, we don't cut off. We make it double. It's not cut and paste. It's copy and paste. But it's an amazing concept. And we talk at it, so basically if you do that, you can make any drush in the world you ever want, right? So it's kind of dangerous. Anyway, right, we can do this in the middle of a word really means not really the middle of the word, but the middle of a phrase. We can take out a word. It says you pour mincha, shemen on it, mincha, which is usually used to the exclusion, so we just take out the he. We learn v'yatzakto shemen mincha. And the rabbis call menachos yitzika. It includes all menachos for the purpose of pouring oil. So, of course, that's a very big question, how exactly we can do that, but we're not going to get into that right now. Ask one more line. By the Shomer Yom Keneged Yom, Elohim says, "So kol Shomer Yom Keneged Yom." We don't like that. Wait a minute. Yeah, that our Mishnah is no good. Shomer Yom Keneged Yom is not a halacha on nida; it's a halacha on ziva, and it's a specific halacha of zava ketana, which is different than Zava Gedoyla, right? Nida is a certain time month, Ziva is a flow a different time month, and there's Ziva for 1 day and Ziva for 3 days. So you just anchor an entire parasha in the Torah. The parasha of Shomeres Yom, Keneged Yom. So the Gemara amends the Mishnah. Gemara says, you're right. The tackle or Mishnah saying Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, you don't put the entire Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, and that's part of Nida. That's not true. In Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, he came on to said, B'shomer Alayla Mutar Vayom Aser. They wanted to say flow only counts if you see it in the day, night if you see it at night, because the Torah only says Yom. So therefore, maybe it doesn't count at night, which of course would be a wild and wacky thing, but it would not be Oker Kol Haguf. Okay, we'll stop here for today.